wife is the man of our house. And it can become hard because she'll hire someone to fix something and they always come talk to me. I just think they're used to talking to husbands and they come to me and I'm like, I don't know why you're here. We had our water heater, something, I don't know, but I walked by at the wrong time. Now I'm in a water heater conversation. And I'm like, yeah, well, the tough time for water heaters, you know, like just. Well, finally, you know, he's like, well, where's the water heater at? And I was like, I don't know. I don't think we have one, to be honest. And we would like to buy one from you today. So if we could go out to your truck, I would love to pick one out. The guy that we have that mows our yard is my wife. It's free, which is nice. I don't care for the tone it is mowed in. She wanted to mow it. And I was like, look, that's fine, but I want you to go tell every neighbor that you choose to do this. I don't want to always be getting stopped like, you the guy that makes his wife mow the yard? I'm like, yeah, I got my mom on the roof right now.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming tonight and being a part of this. That's my favorite current comedian, Nate Bargatze. Definitely worth a watch sometime if you're looking for a nice little enjoyable evening. But I just wanted to tell you real quick about what the purpose of tonight is. And really our hope is whether you feel like your marriage is in a really great spot or it's really struggling, that this is the right place and space for you to be in, or if you're somebody who's trying to prepare for marriage and get ready for it, or you've been doing it for longer than you've been alive there, Sonny, like wherever you're at, we are really glad that you are here and doing this thing. And really our vision and our hope for the year is that we could be a people of hope. And really my hope for tonight is that you will find hope in the future of your marriage. And so we're going to take some time to think about, pray about, and prepare for the future of our marriages. And we have two wonderful human beings to help lead us off in our opening session. Before they do that, I wanted to let you know that throughout the evening tonight, you are going to be able to text in any question that you have for Pastor Bob and Sue. Nothing is off limits, including physical intimacy, whatever kind of questions. You can ask whatever you would like. There is moderation on purpose, but honestly, we want you to feel comfortable to ask whatever it is that's on your mind, on your heart. And the way it'll work is like you can like upvote things that you like. And so it doesn't even have to be that you are submitting the questions. So I'd even encourage everybody right now, if you want to just like scan that QR code and have that kind of pulled up, whether you have a question or there's like somebody who puts one and you're like, oh, that's really good. You can just like it and it will pull it up to the top. And we're going to do our best to get to as many questions as we can. So the way to work, the flow for tonight is first we'll have this opening session. We'll take about a 15-minute break to be able to get coffee, more cookies, bathroom, that sort of thing. But that will also be our chance to go over the paper that's in front of you and to do a practical activity for tonight. And then following that, we'll be able to, do our live Q&A. Put these guys on the hot seat. So glad it's them and not me. Praise God. So yeah, without any further ado, would you guys give it up for Pastor Bob and Sue Reeves?
I'm impressed that you're all here. This is a great turnout. When I saw the weather, I wasn't sure, but I'm really glad that you're here. So we met how?
We met on a blind date.
Set up by?
Set up by mutual friends. No, I was in school. I was in college at UB, University of Buffalo, and I had a friend in pharmacy school. Her name was Patty. Patty was dating Doug, and Bob and Doug were very good friends. And in their infinite wisdom, they thought that we would make a good couple, that we would get along. And it turns out we did, and we got married, and they didn't. So thank God for that. Thank God for that moment. And
thank God they didn't get married. It wasn't working. We all knew it.
And we are still friends with both of them. So
Great people.
yeah,
So we dated 2.5 years,
we did.
and then we had what's considered a short engagement, though not so much. We've been outdone.
We've been outdone.
Yeah, but 4 months, I think.
Yes.
Right? And then we had a honeymoon.
We did.
And I can remember us being on our honeymoon, having conversations about all the things we were going to do with all the money that we were going to make. And we were at a beautiful location down in Florida, and we were talking like, oh, we could get like a timeshare down here and have our parents come down. And so whatever happened to those plans?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So we would take pictures of each other and ourselves as a couple back in those days. And when we see those pictures now, we refer to them as
Our clueless pictures, because we were so adorable and so obviously clueless about what life had in store for us, but we were cute. We were so cute, like the sunglasses and the sun shining, and we've got the smiles, and we had no idea.
Life had not happened to us yet.
Yeah.
So when we look back over, by the way, we should probably tell you why we're doing this way.
Yes. So we were so blessed to be able to be in a conversation with Gordon and Gail McDonald. Gordon's written a bunch of books.
Ordering Your Private World is
Ordering Your Private World. And they had, for us and some other couples that were with us, a conversation like this. And it was sweet and it was powerful. And so we've been wanting to try something like that in this kind of a setting. So I hope that you enjoy watching us talk to each other as much as we enjoy talking to each other.
If you don't, start making noises that communicate that, and we'll pivot and do something else. It won't be dancing, but something else. So in the course of our life, we've had a number of seasons. How would you define some of those seasons we've been through?
Yeah, in thinking about this, it was interesting. I'm a very concrete thinker. I'm very linear. And I have a little chart in front of me when he said that this was something we were going to talk about. But there, of course, was our clueless season.
Yes.
And then there was the baby-making years, which were fun and wonderful. And then the babies came. So then we had the young children years, and then we had the teenage years, and then we had the empty nest years, which were, again, wonderful.
Intoxicating. Some people, I don't know, they seem to fear that season of life. And
yeah, no, it was good.
It was good.
It was good. And then there was a season where Bob was actually holding a position with our denomination's New York Ministry Network. Mm-hmm. And for those years, we both were just working really hard. I was working full time, and he was still leading the church and doing that at the same time. And so that was an interesting season of focus for us on careers. And so that was a season. And then COVID came. So COVID was its own season for us. But alongside of that, that was how our personal seasons of life, but then there was the whole ministry side of it. And as I laid it out, it was interesting to me because The small children time was actually the same time that we came here, and we had a small church. And then as our children were teenagers, the church was growing, and kind of in the middle of those teenage years is when we had a capital campaign and we moved into this building. So it's almost like the ministry here kind of mirrored a little bit where we were at in our personal life, which is an interesting thing. I don't know if that's anything you actually ever paid attention to.
Nope. My superpower is oblivion. Yeah, I can miss a lot. So when we were moving into our original building here, that was also a time when your mom was very ill.
Yes.
So what was that season like?
Yeah, so we were involved in the capital campaign to raise funds to be able to start building and purchasing and building this location. And during that time, my mom was diagnosed with a very rare kind of cancer, and it was a year-long journey with that. It was just a really hard season in that I was very distracted by that. They lived here in Rochester. I was able to spend a lot of time with them. My sister has Down syndrome. She's since passed away. And so there was a lot of that complication with what was that gonna look like? What was her future gonna look like? How was I gonna help my parents navigate that? Being able to come alongside them for doctor's appointments and being just a support and information for them, and still navigating losing my best friend. My mom was my best friend. So navigating that at the same time that Calvary is going through a capital campaign and then actually building this building. So the first Sunday here in this building my mom was able to come, and within 2 weeks she had passed away. So what ideally would have been a time for me to be coming alongside him and being very excited about the growth that was happening here I was unable to do that with him. So so real life does overlay things, right? You can have your plans, your path, what you think it's gonna look like, and then stuff happens and it overlays on top of that. And you can't dictate those things.
So, in your very organized way, I'm sure you have some questions for me.
So I guess, yes, when you guys get a chance to look through the handouts that you have, there are listed different kinds of values,
right.
Different values that shape who you are, values for relationships, values for walking the walk of faith, and values for living a life that's fully alive. And so the question then becomes do our values change in different and maybe difficult seasons of life?
So we were having some conversations around this, and it occurred to me that the topic was a unified vision for your marriage. How do you create a unified vision for your marriage? And so what occurred to me was that sometimes people will have a picture of what they want their marriage and family to be. And then it feels like a constant struggle to get it to that. And maybe that is not a vision, maybe that's a virtual reality. And I think a lot of times people are pursuing this picture, and it's a beautiful picture, don't get me wrong. I don't know anyone who imagines a bad future for themselves that they want to pursue. And so we started talking through it. And what we discovered in our conversation was that what carried us through, the picture changed. There are clueless pictures, and we actually tried to find some of them, but we couldn't find them because we're still clueless after all these years. Yeah. But there's been these great seasons, children when they're little and as they get older and all the things that they go through, and your life expands in ways, and if they're involved in whatever their hobbies or interests are, and you're taking them all the places, and there's these ebbs and flows, and you can't find a single image that captures each and every one of those things. But you can find values that will carry you through every one of those things. And so the question becomes, what do you value? And we came from very different backgrounds. So why don't you talk a little bit about the house you grew up in?
So my family of origin was myself. I was the older sister, and then my sister was about 4 years younger than me, and my mom and dad. And we lived in Buffalo, New York, and my dad came from a very large family, so most of my aunts and uncles lived within a half hour of us. We spent a lot of time hanging out with aunts and uncles. I had a ton of cousins. We could field 2 baseball teams when we all got together, so we did a lot of just that kind of thing, lots of fun stuff, motorcycles, race cars, all kinds of good stuff. And then, but it was because of my sister's Down syndrome, and actually my dad was a functioning alcoholic while I was growing up. He worked 2 jobs, he worked hard, but there were challenges that come along with that. I was a very responsible older sister. I didn't have any choice. And I felt like I couldn't make any mistakes, because why would I want to add any grief to the family when we already had so much stuff to deal with? But on the other hand, you know, in some ways it was an idyllic childhood. I got to play outside. I got to do all the things that kids love to do. I don't know, I got to go camping. I was in Girl Scouts. I was in marching band. I did all the fun stuff. I had a lot of good friends. But I think that thing of being the responsible one, being the older responsible one, is the thing that I carried with me into our marriage. That was the thing I needed to be most aware of. There's good things about that, but then there's things that are not so good about that, and that shapes the things that I valued.
So when your family was experiencing conflict, as all families do, what did that look like at your house?
Yeah, so conflict at my house was everything shut down. Everybody just shut down. And I don't know if it was, I don't know why, doesn't really matter, but that's how they handled it. There wasn't a lot of yelling. It just became very quiet, and everyone knew there was an elephant in the room, but nobody wanted to address the elephant in the room, and maybe if we ignored it, it would go away. So that's how we handled conflict. Tell us how your family handled conflict.
Yeah, raised in a very different family. So I was raised in a very legalistic Christian environment, and pretty much everything was a sin. And so when I grew up, no TV, no secular music, no comic books, no cards, there was a lot of rules. And what was interesting, though, is that when there was conflict in our family, it was loud, it was unregulated. Our house was a small house. I was the oldest of 5 kids. And when my parents had a disagreement, everybody in the neighborhood knew about it and exactly every part of the conversation, because they had it that loudly. The only time the neighbors might have been out of the loop was in the winter when the windows had to be closed. So I grew up not wanting a home where everybody was just screaming all the time. I didn't like that. And she grew up in a home where everybody was quiet, and so you wanted a little bit more engagement.
Yes.
Yeah, so how are we doing?
So it was confusing to me, because I wanted to have those conversations. Like, I didn't want to scream and yell at them, but I wanted to have the conversations. I felt like showing emotion like that proved that you cared about the situation. Like, if you weren't, it proved to me that you cared. And so I would kind of come at the conversation with energy, and he didn't want that energy. So then he would pull back. Well, when he pulled back, then that triggered in me, because that's what used to happen. And then I was like, here I am back in the same place I was before, and that wasn't why I married him, to be in the same place I was before. But then, what was your take on that? Because then I'm powering up and I'm coming.
Yeah, I mean, there's things you don't learn about a person until you marry them. And so I had gone out skiing back to Clueless, and we were young, and I still had some disposable cash. And I went out skiing with a friend of mine and came back to our house, which our house was built in 1915. It had no insulation in the walls, no fire breaks. It was a very old house. And the kitchen was small, and it actually had a wood-burning stove in it. And
a cast iron 2-burner wood-burning stove was the stove in my kitchen.
Yeah.
It was so small, the refrigerator was in the dining room.
Yeah.
And the sink was one of those shallow porcelain sinks that everybody seems to think is so cool, and it's not. One of those shallow sinks. And the lighting, were there bulbs hanging from the ceiling in that room?
The only bulbs in the house were naked bulbs hanging from the ceiling. It was the naked bulb motif. So, yes.
Yeah. So he came home from skiing, and I had been trying. Oh, the other thing about it was that the cabinets had been, whoever built the house built the cabinets, and the depth of the cabinet was less than a box of Cheerios. So when you tried to put a box of Cheerios this way in the cabinet or a plate, you couldn't close the doors on the cabinets.
Yes.
And all of the love and attraction and how deeply I fell into those blue eyes, I was suddenly blinded to all that when I couldn't put my cereal boxes on the shelves in the kitchen.
So I walked into the house, having spent the day out on the slopes, going as fast as I can downhill, and you are sitting on the floor in the kitchen,
yes.
And you said,
yeah, I told him that we were either going to get a new kitchen or he was going to get a new wife.
Yeah. And obviously, I got a new kitchen.
Got the kitchen. It was beautiful. The shelves were like an actual full depth.
We told that story one time, and I was telling the story, and it wasn't obvious that Sue was the person. And somebody asked, how did that turn out? And I just told them, I said, I really missed that woman. Yeah. So the point of all of this is actually, if you were to ask us what was your picture that carried you through, there wasn't a single picture. Our picture has changed in tones, in colors, in how wide and tall it is, in the kind of moods that picture is. And they have been good pictures, but they have by no means looked the same through our years. And one of my concerns is that if we try to get a picture of what our marriage or our family should look like, and then try to adhere to that, there's no way to identify all the things that are going to happen, both good and challenging. And so no one sees a picture of both their father and their sister getting dementia at the same time and dying in the same year. So what picture are you supposed to have? And it wasn't a picture that carried us through, it was a set of values that carried us through. So, like individually for you, what are some values that you think are important to you?
So, I know one of the questions is like, what value do you think is the most important for a marriage? And for me, it's respect. Mm-hmm. If you, rock bottom foundational, if you can't respect the other person, then it allows for everything else to just come flooding in. In good times, the respect maybe can come easy. When you're watching someone do something that they love, when I'm watching him ski because he loves to ski, I respect that in him, I love that in him, but when he's walking in the house and he just got done skiing and I wasn't out having fun with my friend, I was trying to get the Cheerio box on the counter, I have to still, if I wasn't respecting him in that moment, then it could be, why did you think that I would want to live in this house with you? Right? That's not what I said. I still wanted to live with him. I just wanted a new kitchen.
Right.
So the respect has to be there. So one of my huge values is respect.
Yeah. I can remember talking to her mom. Her parents actually were suspicious of me.
You, huh?
Yeah. Until we had kids. They were very kind and generous with me and all of that, but they weren't sure they trusted me until we had kids. It was when they saw me as a dad that I won them over. Before then, not so much. But like I said, always gracious to me. I remember asking your mom one time because their marriage had been challenging. And alcoholism it takes a toll on everybody, including the alcoholic. And I asked her, I said, well, why did you stay married all these years? And she said, I respected him. She said, I watched him give up drinking. And she said, I know how hard that was. And I know why he did it. And she says, so I respect that. And so respect is a value, and you can decide to look for the things that are respectful. We have done things that annoy each other, and well, I don't know if I have, but
Yeah, it's inevitable.
Just added one to the list.
It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
Yeah, but if you're looking for the thing that you think makes them different from you, or they don't understand you, or you're always going to find that stuff. But Sue is a very gracious person, and she's a very generous person. And one of the gifts that she gave our kids when they were growing up is they would be going through something emotionally, and she would come over to them and she would rub their chest and she would say, what you're feeling is, and she would name the emotion. And that was a gift because they had a vocabulary for their feelings. And that's not anything I had. And that benefited them the rest of their lives. To be able to do that, especially when your kid is ornery or frustrated or angry, and to be able to identify that way without getting sucked into it is a very amazing thing to do. And so those kinds of things, you have to look for the things that you respect, because they are a little bit harder to see. You will always notice the things you don't like. So for us, a value is respect.
And respect allows you to then have conversations about what it is that you individually value. Because you're not all gonna value the same things. This was another thing that we had talked about. So what if one person values adventure and the other person really is terrified by adventure? How can you incorporate that into your coupleness, your partnership? And you can do that because of respect. So if Bob has done ministry in Cuba and India, like those are countries that can be pretty scary. And it wasn't metro India, it was rural India, and it was rural Cuba. And I respected that is something that number one, he loves the adventure, he loves to go. Number two, he gets to do ministry there, and he gets to do ministry in a way that is totally different than suburban America. And so because I respected that value that he has, it allowed me to be excited for him to go, to support him in going, not to overlay maybe any of my concerns on top of his energy, his positive energy for that adventure.
My first trip to India, I'm laying in a bed in Varanasi, India, and I feel something in the bed. And I go like that, and I killed a bug. And so I put it up by the wall. And a little while later, I feel something, and And by the time I was done with that week, I had a whole line of bugs. And when I told Sue that story, I asked her, would you ever go to India? She says, I will never go to India.
Not on your life. Not on your life. He can have all the adventure in India that he wants.
Yeah. But that also required my being gone for like 3 weeks at a time.
Yep.
Yeah. And then what does adventure look like for you?
Adventure looks like for me what we are recently being able to do, and that is camping. I have rediscovered camping. So as a child, it was my favorite thing. I was a Girl Scout and a Brownie. We used to go camping. I loved it. I loved making little, you take your little tuna fish can and you take cardboard. Anybody ever do that? And you like put the cardboard in the thing and then you pour wax on it, you make a little wick, and then you can burn it, and then you can cook, you can fry your eggs on top of the little fire. So nobody was a Girl Scout. Oh my gosh. I don't know if that's an age thing or what. So being able to rediscover my love for camping. So right now, an adventure for me is spending 4 days planning a menu, packing up our little A-frame camper, hooking it up to the car. Last year we were in New Hampshire, discovered I love New Hampshire, doing a little hiking, taking the kayak out on the lake.
We went up a mountain in New Hampshire.
We went up a mountain in New Hampshire. We didn't hike it, we took a train, but I claim that we summited it. And
that got her kicked off of Facebook for a day, but that's another story.
Facebook blocked me because I claimed to have summited Mount Washington, and they must have figured out that I didn't hike it. I took the train.
It was the picture of us on the train.
I was
That's
misrepresenting Mount Washington. I don't know what happened, but they kicked me off Facebook. See, you have an adventure, there's consequences. So yeah, that's kind of what.
So when we've had conversations around values, when we start putting our values together, there's some of them that we both feel very strongly about. Like we're in complete agreement on that. And then there's some values that are more important to me and not so much to her, and vice versa. And what we've discovered is that those values that we both agree on, you can build a lot on that. Like that's a really powerful thing. The values that you don't agree on don't have to become a contest, because you'll fight the rest of your life over that. That's the thing about values, is it's not just a preference. It runs deeper in you than that. And so how are you going to, you feel almost like you're abandoning part of yourself. Why should I give that up, And so one of the things that we've discovered is there are ways to give each other gifts that allow for the enjoyment of that value, even if the other person doesn't. So Sue did try skiing one time.
Skiing. I tried skiing one time. One time I went skiing, it was on the Bunny Hill, and my first run down the Bunny Hill, skis went out from under me, and 1 minute I'm skiing, and the next minute I'm laying on the ground, and my hat is over there, and my glasses are over there, and it was another one of those things. I was like, yeah, I'm never doing this again. Like, you're gonna have to find a friend to ski with, because it's not gonna be me.
But did you hear the assumption she jumped to? You're going to have to find a friend to ski with, as opposed to, if we can't ski, you can't ski. Because if that kind of competition of values goes into a relationship, you will tear each other apart. Or someone will roll over and die. And that is no way to live. Like, that road is about as dark, long, and difficult as you can possibly imagine. And so it requires, rather than seeing the different values as something to argue about, if that's important to you, how can we incorporate that into our life? It can't be all of our life, but that doesn't mean it can't have a part in our life. And so I think that's been helpful for us. And I need to pay attention to time, because I'm good. How much more time do I have? You have 15. Really? Make it 12. That is so Jonathan right there. Yeah, so Jonathan. So So that's one of the things that we kind of identified as being significant to us. And so there are things that Sue has wanted to do, and I want to be supportive of that. And there are things that I've wanted to do, and she's been supportive of that. And that has really helped us. But there are certain things that we have found as unifying values. So like one of our values is resilience. And trying to paint a picture of a perfect life and nothing ever goes wrong. You might have a couple minutes in your life when it's really good, and you should enjoy it, absolutely. But stuff's gonna happen you can't control. And so the question is not, how can I ensure that nothing bad ever happens in my life? It becomes more, when bad things happen, how can I move on and forward and together? Because this is the thing I talk about in premarital counseling. If a couple goes at their marriage like this, anything will destroy it. And if a couple goes after life like this, they can conquer almost anything together. And so this requires conversation on our part. And remember, she would prefer a little bit more animation, and I would prefer something closer to comatose. And so how have we worked that out? Like what?
Yeah, so we have an interesting way to argue.
It's
that
boring as all heck. It really is.
It's a little bizarre to watch. So, so we take turns. So one of us gets to make a statement, and then there's a pause.
Yeah.
And number one, Bob's a very fast processor. So it is one of the great skills that allows him to be a great leader, is he's able to process information very quickly. This has nothing to do with values, it's just how our brains work. Right. And I'm a very slow processor. So, you know when you watch two people play chess, and one person makes the move and hits the thing, and then the other person takes almost the whole amount of time and finally makes a move and hits the timer, and then the other person moves and hits the timer. Well, he's the quick timer hitter, and I'm the slow one. So a statement's made, there's a pause, gives me time to think, and I hope gives him time to rethink, and then the next person makes a statement, and then there's a pause. So it is good for me because I do have to think about the communication process. And it's good for him because it forces him to actually pause and not come up with that answer so quickly. And so that's pretty much how we have those conversations. And then I think we've been married 38 years, almost 38 years, and we've learned a lot of stuff. And we also know enough that there's sometimes a time for that conversation and sometimes not a time for that conversation.
Right.
And we are very comfortable with not having to have the conversation immediately in that moment. We're very comfortable with being able to say, even, you know what, we need to eat. Like, let's just eat. I need to get my blood sugar up. Or, you know, I just came off of a horrible shift at work. That's not a conversation I can have right now. So let's have that conversation tomorrow at 4 o'clock when you're done with all your meetings. Because we have learned that we're in this for the long haul.
Exactly.
You know, we've got a whole life ahead of us. And so not everything, some things are a crisis, but not everything is a crisis, and not everything has to be, that conversation doesn't have to happen right now. And that also gives you time to remember what your values are. And maybe what value is getting pinged in this situation, right, and what value is the underlying thing that you need to rest this conversation on. So is it generosity? Is it humility? Is it the value for, so if you value growth in a relationship and you feel like that relationship is backing up, then you need to recognize that and put the correct, so it's that thing, like what is the emotion you're feeling? Name it, and then you can move forward with the conversation.
Yeah. So What would be another value you think we both agree with?
I think that, I guess joy. I think joy is a thing. We like to have fun together. We like to tell stories. We love to tell funny stories. We tell funny stories to each other. We tell funny stories to other people. So I don't know what you would actually, just fun. We really do like to have fun.
So I think, like, even for us, story is a value.
Yeah.
We interpret a lot of our life in story form. And it's a way that we can talk to each other about something. It's not just, what happened at work today, you know. There was a thing where one of the staff members, who shall remain nameless, had a wheel stolen off of their chair. And I don't know how this happened, but I actually became a suspect in all of this. And and that staff member's child is convinced that I did it. So I think that's a funny story, I could just come home and say, yeah, somebody thinks I stole a wheel off. We are story people. Mm-hmm. I think that's true.
Yeah.
So there's another value that I think we have that has worked really well for us. And that is that rather than try to change a person, we try to understand the person. And Sue is very different from me. She thinks differently. She enjoys different things than I do, the kinds of movies that, there's not a lot of movies we can see together. So, if it has a gun in it, she can't watch it because she will have dreams about someone shooting her. But she loves a movie in which the entire world is destroyed.
Yeah.
Like, the bigger the disaster, the better.
Global violence is okay with me, but individual violence is not. But if the entire world is in the path of an asteroid, I am. If it's a movie a 10-year-old boy would love, I'm all over it.
Yeah.
All over it.
That's true. So there are things that we don't.
If someone dies at the end, he's happy.
I love a good sad story. I do.
Oh, if someone has just a horrible disease and in the end they finally die, thinks it. He loves the meaningful conversations.
I do.
All that stuff, and I'm like, just blow it up.
All of my favorite movies have to do with strong frienships that just go through really difficult
horrible
things. And usually one or both of them don't survive it. Now that I think about it. Yeah, but what we discovered is that rather than trying to get her to like my kinds of movies or her trying to get me to like her kind of movies, we talk to each other about what we like about those kinds of movies. And one of the things she's discovered about me is that concept of a deep and abiding friendship that can endure difficult things is very important to me. So when I see it portrayed in a movie, I'm completely taken in by that, as opposed to I don't like those depressing movies. And we will watch each other's movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She loves King Kong.
Yeah. I do.
I will say there was one King Kong movie that we both agree is a very good movie. Mm-hmm. Yeah. King Kong Skull Island. If you haven't seen it, recommend it. And I'm not the King Kong guy. So.
He's still. I think
King Kong had a friend, and didn't go well for him.
Yeah, really. I think that one of the things that has translated that tells you how much we value people feeling safe is that value that we had from the very beginning in our relationship is a value that has translated into the values here at Calvary, and that Calvary is a safe place. And we very much want our relationship to be a safe place for each other, our family to be a safe place for our children and their friends, our home to be a safe place for people to come to. That when someone walks through the doors of my home, I want them to feel not even an iota of tension. I want them to feel safe and welcome, and that they can just settle in, be who they are, and
Well, they can now because she got the kitchen she wanted.
yeah, I got that.
Yes.
But that is another one of our bedrock values that is interesting to me, that it's translated into this space.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of the feeling that I want you all to have while you're sitting out there listening to us, is I hope that in some way our conversation together is making you feel that that safety and that hope and that confidence that this is something that can happen for you.
Yes, you have. Thank you. I just appeared, you know?
Jonathan is so subtle.
Yeah, that's right.
Our time is up.
That's right. That's right. I always sneak up on people. I'm just so soft and gentle. Okay, Pastor Bob, could you break down what this tool is and how people can go about using this for kind of our next section here?
So as we were thinking about values, it occurred to me that that's a worthwhile conversation to have. And so we created a number of steps for you to identify what your values are. And then you might have, like, I don't know, 20 values between the two of you. You can't really live out as a priority 20 values, so you want to whittle that down. But the first step is for each person to identify some of the things that are important to them as an individual. Because you don't stop being an individual when you start being a couple. And living together as a couple is a very different experience. But if you think the goal is that somehow one of you is going to disappear and be, absorbed by the other, that's actually not what makes the most interesting and enjoyable relationships. I was attracted to Sue because she was very different from me, and vice versa. If I spent the rest of my life trying to make her like me, then what happens? So this first section, the first step is to identify some of your own individual values. But if you're like me, I can get stuck when somebody says that and they go, well, what are your values? And I can't think of any. So we actually created a list of a bunch of values, and this is not an exhaustive list, and you don't have to pick anything from this list. But this list might inspire thinking about a value. Like when you see something, you might even see something go, I actually don't like that. What I like is, that's really useful information. And so what we want to do is to give you an opportunity, just individually, to identify some of those values. And then what we hope will happen is that as a couple, you'll sit down and share each other's values to each other. And when the other person is sharing their value with you, like, don't jump in on it. Listen. Don't try to think of something to say in response to it. Listen. And because they're telling you something that's really important about them. And it may not require you to agree, but now you're going to know something about them. And the more you know that, the better chance you have of making a relationship that really runs well. So.
That's great. So yeah, those values are found on pages 4 through 6 there. And again, those are just examples for you. And so, Pastor, what you would like is for people to work on that individually first, right? And
exactly.
So the idea is that you kind of start and identify however you want, whether you want to circle them, whether you want to write your own and just think about it. And so to start there, and then the idea is to come together, and how do people do that once they've kind of identified their own values?
Yes, so you want to come together, and what I'd recommend is look to see if there's any overlapping ones that you both agree, these are things, because that's important to know. And you haven't failed as a couple if you don't have any overlapping values, if they're not all the same. We're all very much unique. But there could be some overlapping values, and if you both value those things, like, that's pretty rock solid there. You can build a lot on that. And then for the other values to talk through, maybe Sue writes down something that I haven't really thought clearly about, but when she puts it out there and she tells me what it is, why it's important to her, I realize that's a value for me too. I just didn't have anybody that rubbed my chest and told me what that was when I was a kid. And so those conversations can open up a lot. The real challenge is when you hear a value that you fear. So like if you are pretty much play it safe, keep everything in order as much as possible, and you're with someone who enjoys a little bit more adventure, that can cause some panic in you. And so what I encourage you is not to say, well, you can't have any adventures. That adventure is a really big pool, and there's a lot of ways to go about it. And so the question might become, like if I go back to India, I know someone who's not going with me. If she did, I would be stunned. I would be suspicious that it's not really you. And but that doesn't mean I can never go back to India, and it doesn't mean she would not support that decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so then essentially, if you kind of end up with 20 values, is your idea they're whittling it down to the 5 to 7 mark?
Yeah, you want to condense it, because you can't prioritize 20 things in your life. And what you want to identify is the most important things in your life. It doesn't mean you can't do anything else or you can't try anything else. That's not what it's about. But those values are going to consistently show up in all the pictures that wind up being your life. And so when the kids are coming in, or the kids are going out, or the kids are doing all of this, or there's illness in the family, or the income is not what you wanted it to be, or somebody wants to move to a different state, somebody doesn't want to leave their family. All of those things are pictures, and I've got no coaching exercise for you to develop an image that's going to be consistent throughout your life. But I absolutely believe that if you can identify the values, you can get through every one of those images. And it will look better because you're living it by your values. So yeah, you want to reduce it 5 to 7.
Okay. And yeah, there is likely going to be more values in your life than 5
sure.
to 7. So
Absolutely.
that's understood. But whittling it down. I do have up here just one more example. You guys did a great job expressing and sharing a lot about your guys' values. The Sigmund family values live on our fridge. And they are that Sigmunds are kind, Sigmunds tell the truth, Sigmunds obey, especially our children. No, I'm just kidding. Sigmunds are thankful, and my personal favorite, Sigmunds have fun. Yeah. And so that can just be an example of what one looks like for our family, and it becomes the grid by which we can make different decisions. And so we're going to talk some more about that, but we're going to give you guys about a 12 to 15 minute break here. And so feel free to get up, get some cookies, get some coffee, use the restrooms if you need to. And this can be a time for you to start on the individual thoughts section and starting to work on that. Our goal for tonight is not to probably have time to be able to finish everything here, right, but we want to be able to get started on it. And so if you guys want to work through step number 1, that would be helpful. If you guys feel like you're done, you can move on to step number 2, sure. But that's not our expectation that would happen in this time. This is a starting point for where things can go.
And I wouldn't get anxious if you can't complete this like in a day or 2, something like that. This is an ongoing conversation, and it's a little bit of an exploration of yourself and of the other person in your relationship. And so for us, when we decided we were going to spend the rest of our lives together, that gave us a lot of time to work on a lot of stuff. If this is a very short relationship, then not so much. So and we're still working on stuff.
Awesome.
Wait till I tell you my new value.
Yeah, we'll schedule that conversation for another time.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing. Can we give it up for Pastor Bob and Sue for kicking us off here? And I'll kick it to you guys. You guys can start working on this. And like I said, feel free to get up and move around, and we'll call you back. There'll be a timer too. Oh, last thing is you can continue to upvote on the Slido. So feel free to highlight those things. You can keep sending in your questions because in about 15 minutes or so, we'll start jumping into those. So feel free to upvote those or submit more. Thank you.
hear that you value efficiency.
Nothing better in this life. All right, everybody. Well, I hope that started off well for you guys. And again, the idea is not that you're finishing something, but starting something. So before we get into the live questions that you guys have submitted, I wanted to do a little book giveaway. We wanted tonight to both be like kind of big picture, how you can build a vision, but we also wanted tonight to be just practical. And so we actually have a link that you can also scan a QR code for that has a list of 4 different marriage books that we recommend that may be helpful for you. That's just to Amazon, but if you want to purchase from someplace else, you're welcome to. But I wanted to give away some of these books. Stephen is going to come help be, as he is, Vanna White. I love that I'm just getting so much mileage out of that joke now. And also that nobody under 40 understands the joke, so that's perfect. Okay, the first book is going to be called New Marriage, Same Couple. Thank you, Stephen. And here is the criteria. I want to figure out who has been married the longest. So if you think you are in the ballpark, why don't you just go ahead and yell it out? 44? 45. 46. Do I hear 46? What is it? 48 and a half. Okay. Anybody? Let's give it up. 48 and a half years. Well done. Well done. Our next one is the marriage devotional. Stephen and I joke about it because we were like looking at potential marriage books and we joke that we read it together. It's kind of weird. But who, probably shouldn't have shared that, huh, Stephen? Okay, yeah. I want to do this one. Who is the most recently married? Who has been married maybe less than a couple years? 6 months? 5 months. 1 month. Anybody gonna beat that? All right, let's give it up. Congratulations. Married in Pastor Bob's house too. Wow, well done. Okay, this one's for the engaged folks, if we have them here. Whose wedding date is upcoming and closest? Becky. July-ish, TBD on date. Anybody else? Becky and Lee get vertical marriage. Okay, and our last one is, who was the youngest person when you got married? 19. We might have to get real dates. 18? Oh, Patty, well done. Anybody else? 18 or less? Not advisable, but all right, Patty, give it up for Patty. They get vertical marriage as well. Awesome. All right. So we're going to jump into our questions. And again, you guys can continue to submit questions and can continue to upvote things that you like or you're interested in Pastor Bob, Sue, or myself. We're all going to kind of weigh in on this next section here. But the first question may have been submitted by a staff member. It's hard to know. But the question is Stephen your favorite staff member? I'll add why or why not. Emphasis on the latter.
I love all the staff members the same.
Boo! Oh man, what a cop-out. Okay, let's see. Getting into questions that aren't near as good as that one. Okay, how about this one? What are some tips for building non-sexual intimacy amidst the chaos of life?
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, one of us might have assumed that was non-sexual intimacy. No, So I think that intimacy has a bandwidth in it, and part of it is an ecstasy, and part of it is a comfort or closeness. And I've never met a couple that sees that exactly the same way. So that does mean that there's going to have to be some intentionality about communicating. If your desire is for more non-sexual intimacy, you're going to have to find a way to communicate that. And preferably in a way that doesn't cause the other person pain, because you don't want them to feel like you don't want to have sex with them. But there's another thing that's missing that you very much would value, there's the word, in the relationship. And you can help describe and explain why it's important to you, what it does for you. And then it doesn't mean that the other person shares that value the same way, but they can offer the gift of creating that, those options and opportunities within the relationship. And so it always, almost everything comes back to some kind of conversation and communication. But how you share it and then how you respond to it, anything you can do to take down defenses always makes the conversation go better.
Just remember you're a team and you're on each other's side. So an example of this is the other day Bob was heading out and he was just heading out. He had places to be. And so I gave him a hug, or he gave me a hug. I don't know who initiated the hug, but it was kind of a perfunctory hug that he gave me. It was kind of like a real quick, hug and go. And I said,
hit and run.
Yeah, and I said to him, I hung on to him and I said, just lean into it for a minute. And he didn't become defensive. Again, we've had 38 years to work through this, but you feel so fragile. You can feel so fragile asking for that and so vulnerable. And so it's being aware of the other person and where they're at in that moment. And so he didn't get defensive because he knew I just needed an actual solid hug before he left for the day. And I knew I could ask him for that without it being an issue. And that was something that has come about after years and years of conversation. So you just have to be brave and talk about it. Ask for what you need.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful. I think the other thing that I was thinking about, and I'm in the season of life with two younger kids, 11 and 8 years old, and so it definitely feels like the chaos of life right now for me is like I'm in the thick of it, and have been in the thick of it is what it feels like, and will be in the thick of it. But I'm doing great, guys, I swear. No. But no, I think that there's times where my life feels very full, very packed, and whether it's work here, ministry stuff, whether it's I got a side job, and then my wife works full time, and then I coach sports, and it's man, I just feel like I'm pulled in all these different directions, and it can feel hard to be man, when am I going to find time to prioritize myself, my own interests, and the things even that I say I value the most? And that's been something I really feel like I've been being convicted of lately, is how do I make sure that my calendar is reflecting my actual values and my vision for my life? And I'll just give you a quick micro example that has been unfolding throughout this week in real time. So my son wants to play basketball in this upcoming season, March through May. And really, I've been debating, do I kind of start a team so that way he can play with all of his best friends, or do I not coach? And then he's got to travel to the east side, and he's probably not going to be able to play with his friends, so it won't be as fun. And so that's been I've been wavering on that. And part of the tricky part for me has been this internal pressure that I've got 2 years left of coaching with him before he's doing school sports. And then that season is done for life. And so I've felt it's just 2 more seasons, 2 more years of this, and it's only for a couple of months, so it's not that big a deal. But I also have felt in this last season, I've already been coaching him basketball for the last several months, and it's felt too chaotic and busy, and I feel like I have not been able to prioritize Sarah like I would want to and like she would want to feel like. And so now I've got these competing values. I want to be a great dad. I want to be a great husband. What do I say yes to? Like, who am I going to disappoint? Like, it kind of becomes that level of pressure is like what's going on internally. And so part of what I did is talk to Pastor Bob, always a good choice. But I also talked to a couple of my close brothers, friends. Like we went out to breakfast on Monday morning. I'm like, what do you guys think? Like, and they were all like, dude, do not coach. Like you're already saying you're drowning. What are you talking, you know? And I was like, oh, this is very, very helpful. Because my wife was like, I'm supportive of you no matter what, like that sort of a thing. And she meant it. She was not like just saying it. And so I feel like I'm in the chaos of life, but I feel like in this last season, maybe I haven't gotten that right, but I am saying essentially no to coaching. I'm like the backup coach if somebody can't make it. But essentially giving that over to somebody else and releasing that, my hope is that that's going to allow me to rebalance what I want the balance in my life to look like and give me more time to make sure I can have that time for Sarah and I in the midst of the chaos. And for me, it really has become this season where I'm like, I have to choose to say no to certain kids' activities, sports, opportunities for them if I want to make sure that during this 10, 12 years, I'm prioritizing what I have said is my number one earthly relationship in my wife. And like I said, I haven't been doing that perfectly, but I've been convicted of that. And so that's how I'm kind of processing that out. So hopefully that is helpful and applicable for some of you here tonight as well. Okay, we're going to get to something nice and juicy now. All right. How do you deal with a difference in sex drives between a couple?
So I've never met the couple who has but they both have the same sex drive. Ever. If you do, you need to introduce yourself to me tonight, because I've never met that couple. There's always someone who wants more and always someone who wants less. And our tendency is to interpret that as certain things. And so if you desire more physical intimacy, then you have to have conversations surrounding that. And I don't know why, but when a couple gets married, it feels like the longer they're engaged in marriage, the more complicated those conversations can become. You still have to have them. And one of the hard things for a couple to work through is that the goal is not to get the person who desires less to desire the same. The goal is for there to be communication about what's going to work. And that means that sometimes the person who isn't really interested in having physical intimacy tonight is still willing to do that, not because they desire sex, but because they want their partner to be happy. And so that's a gift that they can give them. And sometimes the gift goes the other way. Like you desire, this is something you'd really like tonight, but you see they're tired, they put in a really long day, and the gift you can give them is a night where they can just relax. Maybe some of that what was it called? Non-sexual physical intimacy.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but no, I'm just kidding. But the conversation is always the way to handle that. But if your sex drives are not exactly the same, don't beat yourself up about that. I've never met a couple that they are.
And then maybe, again, we talked about seasons in your relationship, and sometimes seasons last longer than other seasons. And so it's helpful to take a step back and try and objectively see what season of life each of you are in and what season your relationship's in. So if someone's job is not going well and that's a constant pressure for them, worrying about, my job's not going well, am I gonna have this job? Am I gonna be able to financially contribute to this relationship? That can be a thing that is takes up so much of your brain that you don't have any other part of your brain available for anything else. Or, very commonly when there's small children around, you'll hear women say this all the time: if one more person touches me, I'm going to explode, right? And that doesn't have anything to do with their partner and how attracted they are to their partner. It's just that season that they're in. And sometimes that season seems like it lasts forever. And so trust me, if you're the husband in this season, the wife is hating it also. It's just a reality for that season. So that's kind of an example of.
Now, what if somebody's feeling like this season has just gone on a lot longer, whether it is young kids or whatever the reason is, but it's like, man, this is actually, we both recognize physical intimacy is a lot less than either of us would desire. Right. What would you say to a couple in that situation?
So if you feel stuck, that's a good time to see a counselor. Because you've come to a roadblock that you don't have the language for, or you don't have the strategy for being able to work through it. And what I can tell you is you can tough it out and try to work it out, and you probably will. But sometimes having a couple conversations with a counselor actually gives you better language and strategies to resolve that. The counselor's not going to tell you what to do or anything like that. But the idea is, if you feel stuck, that's a good time to bring a counselor into the equation. And so I would recommend that.
Yeah, and I think there are actual sex therapists,
sure,
which you could find somebody with that niche, but I also think that a lot of that is a communication issue. So I also don't think that you have to find somebody with it. There's a lot of options, I think, for counseling for that type of a conversation. Sure. I do think you're right that it's the thing that should prompt counseling for us is we have tried, we have talked about this, we can't get anywhere. Exactly. And maybe I have even already talked to some of my guy friends, she's talked to her girlfriend, it's just, we're stuck. That is, to me, is the recipe for we need outside help, because it's a crucial and vital part of a relationship. And so I think that's exactly right on that.
I've done some life coach training, and they made a distinction between coaching and counseling, which was super helpful for me. A coach, like say in a sports thing, right? If your son's playing baseball or basketball, there are techniques that you will teach them. You do this with your arms, stand like this. This is where you want to be on the floor, and they'll follow the direction, and that's coaching. When you give them the instruction and they can't follow it, there's something that's inhibiting their ability to, even though they have an idea of what's expected, they can't do it. That's counseling. When I know what the right thing is to do and I can't work through it, I don't need a coach to tell me, do this, do this. I need a counselor to figure out why I'm not able to do this.
And if I can, this might be a good opportunity for one of the hacks that we have learned. Mm-hmm. And it can be useful. The question is how to deal with the difference in sex drives between a couple. This works with how do you deal with the difference between anything in your relationship. And it is, this is the story I'm telling myself. And so, I reach out like this to him and he pulls away, and he may be pulling away because, I don't know, I zapped him when I touched him, or, I don't know, he's got a brush burn on the side of his face. I don't know. He may be pulling away, but the story I'm telling myself is I just reached out to touch him and he pulled away from me. And why did he pull away from me? And so that's we found that so helpful, is to be able to go to the other person and say, this is what happened, and this is the story I'm telling myself about that. And 99% of the time, the story you're telling yourself is not accurate, and that gives them an opportunity to correct it. Right. And you get to hear what's real for them.
And I think even the 1 out of 100 times, it actually gives you a chance to deal with the reality.
Right.
If in this example, it's he's pulling away because he's super mad at you or something like that, well now, let's talk about that. And if, like you said earlier, if this isn't the moment to talk about that, 'cause somebody's tired or whatever, then this is one of the things that you guys have taught Sarah and I, is that okay, hey, if we're not gonna deal with it right now, the thing we need to do then is say, this is when we're going to come back to it. Right. Because I think that's a huge deal within conflicts that happen between couples, is it's well, if we don't do it now, we're never going to do it. And that for us has really unlocked, like, okay, we can't deal with this right now, like for whatever reason. Let's talk, let's sit down on Saturday morning and let's chat this out. And that way, if you even have somebody who needs more time to process versus somebody who is ready to go right now, like there's all sorts of reasons, but the thing that like really has unlocked that for us is your advice was, hey, it's just got to be scheduled in that moment. Otherwise, even with best intentions, life gets going and then resentment builds because you said we were going to talk about this and then we never did. And really it was just like, I forgot because I'm a guy. So, all right. What advice do you guys have to provide better emotional support for one another?
To continue to be interested and to ask the question and to not think that you know exactly what that person needs. Bob will do this to me. We'll have a conversation and it'll be about something and I will tell him this is how I prefer this happens. And then maybe 6 months later we're in a similar situation and he assumes that I still prefer it to unfold in a certain way.
I do.
And then he acts on that. And then I'm like, what the heck are you doing? That's not what I wanted in this. And so to continue to be curious about the other person and where they're at and how they're processing something. Because, you know, maybe he does process similar things in similar ways, but you can't count on me processing a situation in the same way I might have processed that situation 1.5 years ago. Like, that doesn't happen.
It's an ongoing mystery.
So I think just that curiosity.
So the other thing is pay attention to what a person does for you, because often they're doing for you what means something to them. And even if it doesn't mean anything to you, and you can tell them, you know, try to be nice about it. But if they did something for you, like notice it, and then if you do that for them, it will mean a lot to them because that's why they did it to begin with. It meant something to them. It's not a trick to get someone to do something for you. It's just you're paying attention. When they do this, they're trying to be nice to me. They're trying to be emotionally supportive. So if I do that back to them, that's going to carry a lot of weight.
Yeah, no, like even for me, I very much appreciate when Sarah appreciates like something I have sacrificed. Like, you know, it's like, hey, I, you know, came home and like, yeah, it was a crazy, messy kitchen and it's all cleaned up. Like, thank you so much. Like, just like that little acknowledgement. And like, she's much better at doing that towards me than I am towards her. But I think that's a great reminder that, yeah, that appreciation just goes so far.
Yeah.
And just real quick, and to ask the question, so that curiosity part, Bob likes it when I sit down with him to eat. And I'm a pharmacist. I spend all of my work time standing and eating. Like, that's what we do. We stand and we snag something from the counter behind us. And so for me, it's not a big deal to stand at the island in the kitchen and be eating my sandwich. And one time he communicated to me that he likes it when I sit down and eat with him. So that's a way to be emotional. I'm supporting that emotional, so that's an emotional intimacy.
Right.
And it's just something that makes him feel seen and safe. And it's not hard for me to sit down and eat with him.
Love that. We started to touch on this, but how do you handle moments where fights and arguments can't seem to resolve?
So once again, I think counseling, if you've tried and tried and tried, then it's helpful to bring somebody in who's neutral and not to choose sides, but to give you some strategies for how to go about this. And the thing that I try to encourage people, like even when you are frustrated with the other person, it's fine to acknowledge that frustration. But there's some lines that you don't want to cross in demeaning behavior or language. If they have been crossed, like there's ways to mend those fences and heal those wounds. But it's better because what happens is as soon as that happens, that becomes the most important thing. And now you're never going to deal with the other thing to begin with. So if you feel stuck and you tried and tried and tried, then bring some help into the conversation and let them help work you through it.
And if us saying talk to a counselor is a foreign concept, or it's something you've never really considered, or you think that people don't really do that, you need to know that more people reach out to counselors than you think.
Mm-hmm.
I have a counselor that I see, Bob has a counselor that he talks to, and the more you talk to other people about it, you find out, like you start that conversation with somebody and they go, oh yeah, there was a season when we really needed to talk to somebody. It's not an unusual thing, it is more a usual thing, and it is a great gift that you can give to each other.
And it's not a lifetime commitment. You're not going to be with a counselor forever. It's just when you hit these hiccups, is there a more efficient and gentle way to go through it and get to a solution?
Yep. Sarah has a counselor, I have a counselor, we have a counselor. So, yeah, I know, I completely agree, and it's been very helpful for us in different seasons, for sure. And yeah, so appreciate you guys opening up that door. The other thing that I'll make you guys aware of is that our church offers counseling as well, at like discounted rates. We actually just brought on a second counselor here, so really cool to see that expanding. And then we just have a PDF too of different counselors that people in our church have seen and had solid experiences with. So if that's a resource that you're interested in, you could just send me an email and I can hook you up with any of that information. My email's on our website, so I'm happy to do that for you guys. Okay, what advice do you guys have on navigating toxic family members as you raise your kids and establish your family as your own?
Well, we had some of those, and we developed some strategies for that. One of the things that I told Sue, not a lot of this was a big deal until we had kids. But once we had kids, like there's just some things I was not going to expose them to. And so, and I have like a early warning detection internal system. I can tell when something's gonna go. And so I would tell her, if I say it's time to go, move, grab the kids, put their coats on, head for the car. Because there were some things I just didn't want my kids to see. It would have been very easy to then say, I just don't want anything to do with certain members of my family. And we decided that we would not close those doors, but we would exit them really quickly if it didn't look safe in some way. So, and there were times that we left things early, and every time I said it's time to go, Sue said, okay.
Now, I just want to use this as an example. I'm thinking of, so what if that is a situation where you're at Sue's family's house? Mm-hmm. Sue does not want to leave and doesn't think things are going to go haywire. And in this scenario, Sue is not fully convinced you can tell the future. She believes you have a prophetic gift, but not necessarily for when family conflict will occur. And you know, I'm being facetious with it, but I'm seeing like a real life example that could exist for any of us.
Oh, sure.
And especially when it's like the other person's family kind of a thing. What do you do in a scenario where you think it's time to leave, she does not? What do you do, I guess, in that moment? But then what do you do kind of like to prepare or to process afterwards? Like kind of any of those times, what does conversations look like?
Yeah, so I'm basically going to I'm going to try to focus on two things. Is this more about me? So is something going to happen that pushes a button with me? And if it's only that, then I'll either remove myself, like I can go for a walk, I can step out in the garage, I can go find a cup of coffee and drink it somewhere. I am not a believer in trying to control other people. That doesn't go well for either person, by the way. And so, like, if I said to her, it's time to go, and she goes, yeah, I'm good, I want to stay a little bit, I'm not having a fight with her about it. If I feel like I'm the one that's at risk in this scenario, I'll take a step out of the room. I can do that, and I don't have to make a big deal about it. If I stay and if something goes wrong, we will have a follow-up conversation, and I will just say, you know, I did see that coming. I know you didn't think it was going to happen. When I say those things, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to avoid something that we don't want to have to put ourselves or someone else through. So I try really hard not to be in control mode for that. I do, if she said no, then I'm not going to make her leave.
I guess I would encourage you guys to find a real satisfaction and joy and gratitude in knowing that two become one.
Yeah.
And you are a team. And you're a team because you chose each other. And you chose each other for good reasons. And ultimately, if you have siblings that are not healthy for you or your team, or if you have parents that are not healthy for you or your team, you may someday have children that are not healthy for you and your team. Those can be really difficult things because those people can be really important in your life. And you may understand why they're acting in a way that your partner, your spouse does not understand. But ultimately, it is the two of you, and the two of you are one thing, and that's a good thing, and it's a chosen thing, and that always needs to be the thing that you are protecting.
Right.
And so there needs to be lots of conversation, but if both of you are remembering that the reason you're having the conversation is because you value the team that you are together, then those things can be worked out.
I'm aware that sometimes someone just doesn't like a family, or they are exercising controlling behavior. And once again, that's more of a counseling thing. And a person who exercises controlling behavior is sometimes resistant to go to counseling. If your spouse won't go with you, go by yourself. At least one of you can get healthy. So.
Yeah, definitely. And even, Pastor, as you were talking about kind of the difference there about control versus, you know, I think in this scenario, this example we're giving, you're choosing the role of serving your spouse. Like, you're not saying trying to get out of leaving this uncomfortable or annoying family situation.
Right.
It's about serving your family, keeping everybody safe in whatever way safe means in this scenario. This is like it's an act of service, not an act of control.
Exactly.
And I think that all of our healthiest relationships are built around that. But it is hard to always live with that in mind, but I think is like such an important reminder, you know, like, yeah, love your spouse like Christ loved the church, I think is vital for us.
Yep.
Speaking of the Lord, what are the best ways for keeping God at the center of your relationship?
I did see another question on there too about, you know, devotionals together. Sue and I actually don't do devotionals together. And it's because it's not that we don't like each other and we don't like God. It's because the way we go about our devotions, the way I go about mine is not how she would do it. And the way she goes about her is not how I would do it. And it becomes demotivating to participate in something you don't want to do it that way. And now you start finding reasons to not do it. So we both have our own private devotions, and then if I came across something that I thought or prayed or something like that, I can share that with her and vice versa. And then also, any family and friends, you're just going to have things that happen in life, and we will pray together because there are people we love a lot. And if they're going through a hard time, we think a unified prayer has value in God's kingdom. So we'll do that.
We really do process information so differently.
Yeah.
it's been really interesting to just learn about that, about him, and how we really do process information. And in our devotional time, we process information really differently. But we enjoy road trips. We do a lot of driving, and a lot of times that's when those conversations happen. As we talk about the different ways that we're processing this information. And because it's not just, I guess I would caution you against, we're doing devotions, we're doing them every morning, we're doing them from 9 to 9:45, and then the rest of the day, you go on about doing all the other stuff. And so for us, it's a much more fluid, it's just a much more fluid conversation. It's not so much a scheduled thing as it's a fluid thing, and the concepts and the questions will come up just over the course of a day, over the course of a weekend.
Now, if you have a couple and you value that time together,
Yes,
that's meaningful,
absolutely.
then that's perfectly fine. Like I'm not suggesting that is inadequate in any way. We have just tried that and it didn't work for us. And so if our goal is to maintain a healthy spirituality, the way we were going about it was actually demotivating. And so we made a decision to make a change, because if I'm well connected to God and she's well connected to God, the closer we get to him, the closer we actually get to each other. So.
Now, every question on the website is anonymous, but I know who submitted this question.
Okay.
I won't say his name, but it rhymes with Neven Stickles. My wife won't watch the movie Gladiator with me. Are my hurt feelings valid? Nobody believes you, but thank you for defending yourself.
So, well, you heard us talk about, there are movies that we won't watch together. And so your feelings are value, your expectations might not be. So, how's that?
Perfect. Stephen keeps texting me. I didn't do it. It wasn't me, okay? So, all right, we'll see. Maybe he's lying in the house of God. I'm not sure. Okay. Okay, this is a for real one. I think this is really honest, actually. How do you rebuild trust, and how do you combat insecurities?
When trust gets broken, that's really difficult in a marriage. And there are two things that I think are going to be true. One is that the person who's broken that trust has to develop a set of actions that rebuild trust. So, like, one of the things throughout the years, maybe a couple, one of them gets involved in an extramarital relationship, breaks trust like crazy, a sense of betrayal. It's the kinds of damage that does is really hard to describe. The good news is that couples can survive that reality and actually build a healthy marriage post that reality. Of course, it would be better if it never happened. But the challenge is that if a person has been acting in deceptive ways, this person can't trust every time they're out of the house. Where are they? So there are ways for the person who has been deceptive to try to prove to the other person. And now, like for us, there's not been infidelity, but my wife can see where I am on her phone at all times. I don't consider that a violation of anything. I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to be someplace that I'm not. In fact, at any point of the day, every single, Melissa, you, who else has access to my calendar?
There's several.
If somebody can't find me, call the police because something wrong happened. I'm in trouble. So you build that trust by taking actions that substantiate something. But what I will tell you is, for the person on the other side, you're going to have to act in a trusting way before you feel like trusting. Because trust is not a feeling, it's an action. And if you exercise that action of trust and that person breaks it again, maybe they're a non-trustworthy person. And so you have to sort out, what does that mean for where this relationship is going? Is this something that can be healed? And what I will tell you is, two people who decide they want to work on something can get through anything, but it takes two people. If only one wants to do it, it won't work. So.
Yeah. Okay. What are some ways to step up as the spiritual head of the household?
I think for a lot of guys, this feels like a weight we are not qualified for. One of the things that I intentionally do is pray short prayers. I do that because I never want anybody else to think that a prayer has to be long or involved in order to be effective. And I think sometimes for us guys, when we're wanting to take a spiritual lead or our spouse is expecting that from us, you don't have to buy a set of commentaries and have Bible studies before you have dinner or that kind of thing. Sometimes it's just something as simple as, this is a really challenging thing. Can we just pray for a minute? And our habit typically is that we will both pray, but I will go first. And then all the stuff I missed, she can she can take care of. But being a lead does not mean that you're controlling things. Being the lead just simply means that you're taking initiative. That's all it means. So can we pray about this? Can we talk about this? Can we work on this project together? Just that simple taking initiative is actually exercise leadership at home.
And when that person does that, out of a deep-seated respect for that person, number one, allow it to happen.
Yeah.
And number two, express gratitude that it has happened.
Yeah, very good. How do you, we're getting towards the end here,
Yeah.
But there's a couple really good ones left. How do you handle temptation when that's coming your way?
So that's actually a complicated question. There's a couple of things. One is sometimes when you acknowledge that, so this will not always work. If it doesn't work for you, then don't do it. But if I'm facing a temptation and I share that with Sue, what I will tell you is that temptation will decrease by logarithmic levels. There's something about bringing that out into the light that just does incredible damage to that temptation. What I also know is that sometimes expressing temptation can cause insecurity in another person. So you have to have someone that you can have those conversations with. I have a friend that I have breakfast with just about every week for over 20 years. And the reason we get together is because we want to hold each other accountable. The conversations we have now are not how we started. We were both tentative about it. We weren't sure what the other person's intentions were, what their tenacity was for this kind of connection, like all of that. And we have over time, like there's virtually nothing I cannot talk to him about, and there's virtually nothing he cannot talk to me about. And that has been life-giving to me. The third thing that I will tell you is the most effective way you can battle temptation in your life is to include good things in your life.
Amen.
That when we are not including the good, enjoyable, and fun things in life, temptation will show itself, and that desire for the healthy things will settle for something that's not healthy. And so we have to be really intentional about doing the healthy, fun things in life. If you do that, you will be in much better position to fight temptation.
Amen. Agreed fully. Okay, so before we go, I just want to give you guys 2 assignments.
Okay.
It's not homework. It's, we're working on being better followers of Jesus and having a vision for our marriages. The first is I would love for you to jot down 1 key takeaway from tonight. You guys have given us so many great things to think about that if there's something, there's one thing I wrote down from earlier, like from the ski analogy you guys used, I was like, man, this is perfect and like really helpful. So if there's one of those things, I want you to jot that down, and that can be a great conversation point for you and your spouse next time you get a chance or on the ride home. The second thing is I want you, if you are able, to try to decide before you go to bed tonight if and when you want to finish this exercise together. Because the last thing that we want to do is create this expectation that hey, we went to the marriage night and then we're going to follow up and we're going to finish this thing and we're going to build these values, but then life comes and it gets busy and one spouse is really frustrated. One spouse is like, oh, I totally forgot about that. I just thought there was some good answers and I was glad that I got that in me. I don't want to set you up for more conflict. Right. And so one way to be able to do that might be to say, hey, let's plan to do this at this time, in the coming week or weeks, and to try to lock that in. And if that time doesn't work, you can always pivot and do another time. That's totally fine, but to be committed. And if you both are this activity is dumb, then don't do it. That's totally fine too. Hey, it's building a unified vision for your marriage. It's well, that was stupid. So that's fine too. But I want to encourage you guys to be able to have that conversation and to make sure that it does actually happen. Before we go, Pastor, I would love for you to just pray over each and every one of the marriages here. So if you are here with your spouse, if you want to just grab their hand and just be able to receive tonight, we'd love to pray over you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Father, we're grateful that each and every one of these people made a personal and intense decision to do life with someone because they knew somehow that was better. That doesn't mean it's easier. And so for the weight that gets carried and the work that needs to be done and the disappointments that need to be navigated and all those things, I'm so grateful for the grace that you give us to keep walking through all of that, knowing that there's someone that you have brought into our life. And like Sue said earlier, we have chosen them. They have chosen us, and that we would value that decision. For the challenges that we face, whether it's temptation or trust, sense or feeling of rejection, whatever that is, would you help us find the grace and the way to keep a conversation going until we get to the place that we want to be. We thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Final thought I have for you is, again, if you are looking for a counselor, we're happy to hook you up with that. The second thing is that if you are looking for pastoral conversations, myself and Pastor Bob and any of the rest of our staff would be happy to sit down with you individually or you guys as a couple. That's very much available. So if that's something that you would like, send us a note. And we always feel like we don't feel ever bothered by that. We feel honored and privileged to be a part of your guys' lives. So just wanted you to know that both of those doors are open as well. So we love those kinds of conversations to support you and build stronger and healthier relationships. Thank you guys so much for being here. Can we give it up one more time for Pastor Bob and Sue? Thank you guys so much for sharing, and God bless you guys. Have a good night. Go Bills!